For many of you who don't know, Rob Hanson has been at this for a very long time. He first applied for the LPO, I think, under the first Trump administration. What he is doing is, well, why don't I ask you to tell people what you're doing? But let me just give you the cliff notes. This guy is doing a process that's 25 plus years old, where he's splitting a methane molecule into carbon black and hydrogen. The carbon black makes tires today for the Tesla Model 3, and the hydrogen is going to be used for fertilizer. But Lord Almighty, is that hard to do? So tell us a little bit about what you're doing and why you're doing big things.
Yeah, thanks for having me here. So the first patent on methane pyrolysis is from 1919. And for over 100 years, there's been zero gaps in the literature, the patent database. It's just really hard to do. We picked it up in 2012 after the shale revolution, because one thing that methane pyrolysis likes is really low-cost methane. And we proved that in this country, that we were going to have abundant low-cost natural gas. And this was something you could do that could create economic value, it could create societal value, and it could create environmental value. And so we picked it up, and we've kind of taken it the last 10 yards to now a full commercial scale plant, up and running, millions of tires on the road with our material, and ready to scale to world scale facility with the help of the LPO.
Okay, RJ, you run a small company that is trying to make cars and trucks that people want to buy. In the last year, your company has, I think, sort of won the battle for the trucks that people want to drive. But it sounds like you're now moving into, what did Elon call it, like production hell? You're going to have to try to figure out a mass market vehicle. Where are you at these days?
Yes, we launched in 2021 with 3 products. We had a R1T, which is a truck, an R1S, which is an SUV, and then we have a commercial van that we build with Amazon as a big customer. There's now, among those 3 vehicles, well over 100,000 of them on the roads, which is really cool to see.
A lot of them in Bethesda, Maryland.
Yeah, and our R1S is the most popular SUV, electric SUV, over $70,000 in the United States, and the R1S in California is the most popular SUV, electric or non-electric. It's incredibly successful in terms of just capturing people's imaginations. And so those 2 vehicles, those 2 flagship vehicles, what we launched the brand with. But of course, that was to initiate who we are, a handshake with the world, and we're now preparing to launch what we call R2, and then subsequently R3, very creatively named. But our R2 is our smaller SUV, and then our R3 is our crossover. And the program that we put together with the Department of Energy is to help fund and finance with a debt package the build out of a significant increase in capacity for our R2 in a Georgia facility. So we're extremely excited about that.
All right, so let's get to the tough questions. I think things have changed, right? There was an election. There's this feeling, right, that it's always better to innovate here and scale up in China, right? Scale up in some other place, right? But both of you have decided that you're going to do it here. Tell me a little bit about your journey, Rob. Like, why'd you pick the United States?
I mean, it's a personal journey. So I wasn't born in this country. I came in.
Wait, who did the vetting around here? Why is this guy on stage? No.
I came in 2006 as a student, and then went on to, it's called OPT, and then H-1B, and then I got a green card, and then I became a citizen just a couple of years ago. This was actually my first election. And so I think, yeah, thank you. So I think sometimes, newer Americans, I'm kind of American adjacent because I grew up in Canada, but it's still different. And newer,
I mean, just like our Secretary of Energy.
That's right. I think newer Americans, we have a little bit of like a more optimistic view sometimes than you see in the media. And like, it is such a great country, and I'm an energy nerd. I mean, this country has everything going for it from an energy perspective. We've got all the wind, all the solar, 100 nuclear reactors. We've got the Permian, the Marcellus, the Powder River Basin. Mont Belvieu is like a national treasure. And then we've got like the best democracy in the world. And we've got all the entrepreneurs and tons of skilled labor. And so like, why wouldn't you build your company here? And so for me, it was never a question. It was just like, of course, this is the greatest place to build the next, great energy tech company, and it's just like such a privilege to get to do it.
RJ?
Yeah, I mean, really similar. I started the company in 2009, and we built a really strong hypothesis around the need to vertically integrate around electronics, software, and the high voltage architecture, so battery systems, drive systems, inverters. And the skill sets to do that are I'd really say without question, incredible and among the best in the world here in the US. And so we have product development teams that are developing this full stack of software, this full stack of electronics. And of course, we see that through the lens of our own products, but it was really encouraging early this year. We signed a $5.8 billion software licensing deal with the second largest car company in the world, with Volkswagen Group. And so to see a very long-standing, very large, giant automotive group decide to move their software architecture, their technology stack to something that we developed here, of course, in the US, it was really exciting. And I think that the talent and the curiosity that exists here is really outstanding for building technology, as Rob said.
Well, so now we get to the public-private partnership, right? I mean, I think for the last 4 years, we have been trying to figure out how to be better partners to people who are doing big things again in the United States, right? And I think you see a tripling of new manufacturing facilities getting built in this country. You're seeing, I think we're at $340 billion of investment this year for clean energy technology deployment. And so you're starting to see a lot of this happen. What are your expectations of the public-private partnership, right? I mean, because for a long time, there was this heroic thing in the US, which is like, I never had to use the government, I never had to work with the government, look how cool I am. Never mind that 99.9% of the other folks failed and moved overseas with our tech, with other people. But like today, we have this feeling that, no, we want it done here. We want you to succeed here. But what are your expectations of the public-private partnership, RJ?
Yeah, so I mean, building a car company, building an energy company, these are businesses that take a tremendous amount of capital. And so, we were just talking about it backstage. It's the kind of thing that, if you want to start a car company, you need, and you're being intellectually honest, you need many, many billions of dollars. You need really robust technology. You need a brand that ultimately people are going to care about and want to buy products from. You need a product concept, or I should say a set of product concepts that are incredibly interesting and compelling. And if you had all those things in the very beginning on day one, it would still take you 4 or 5 years to launch the first product. So it's a really tough business just because you need a lot of capital, and to get capital you need a lot of technology, and in the beginning you have none of those things. You have these interlinked dependencies. And so we were fortunate to, over a long period of time, ultimately raise enough capital to develop really solid technology, and then that really helped spin the flywheel. We raised, while we were private, raised like $13 billion. As a public company, we've raised over $14 billion. And so to have that level of equity support in what we're building has been really critical. But the opportunity and the necessity, I should say, to accelerate the build out of manufacturing capacity, to accelerate the launch of new products, is something that the partnership that we define with the Department of Energy really is a perfect match. We've proven technology, we've proven our brand, we have a backlog of excitement in what we're building. But to be able to find a way to accelerate that, to not only build more products, but create more jobs, build more infrastructure around those jobs, of course, help drive the upstream supply chains for that, was something that was really a perfect fit for the program that Jigar and the team are running here within the Department of Energy. So that, I think, in many ways, it was like the perfect setup. But it is tough, because to do this, especially with a loan, you need a certain level of equity to be raised. You need to have a certain level of critical mass. But I think the role of Department of Energy is like the scaling partner was really helpful.
Same to you, Rob.
Yeah, I think our first exposure to this was when we were building the company. And we started in Silicon Valley, so we kind of had that we'll do it all ourselves mentality. And then we picked Nebraska for our first project site, and that's because we make hydrogen and we convert it into ammonia, and Nebraska is in the center of the US Corn Belt, which is one of the largest hydrogen demand points on the planet. And we got there, and our plants use a lot of electricity, and the only people you can buy electricity from in the state of Nebraska is the Nebraska Public Power District. It's a 100% public power state. And so we learned immediately, okay, if we want to build this company in this state, we're going to have to figure out this private-public partnership. And that was kind of our first taste. And I like what's been said at this conference, private-led, government accelerated. I think that's the right model. I think harnessing kind of the American innovation and entrepreneurship to really push forward, but having the right government, state, local, federal, that's accelerating and supporting those companies' technologies that are ultimately in the national interest, both from a jobs perspective and then also from a trade perspective.
Yeah, I mean, go deeper with that. I think, you've got, hundreds of companies, entrepreneurs, innovators in the audience here, and, they're all trying to build, these big dreams, trying to figure this stuff out. In your sense, what is the piece of advice that we should take away or continue with on this sort of decarbonization journey, many of whom here are a few years earlier in the process than you are?
Yeah, I was talking to my wife last night, and every time I come to DC, you go to the Hill and you talk to 30 different, congressional members and senators, and I was saying, I'm like, I don't know if it matters. I don't know if what I'm doing matters, and I kind of reflected on that. But I think you just have to stay engaged, and you have to push each day a little bit to make sure that you're in the conversation. Government's not going to move fast. I think that's actually a feature of the system that we have. But you just got to stay engaged. And I think for new entrepreneurs, sometimes you want it to happen today. And when you're trying to build companies and projects that are going to last for decade upon decade, you've got to have some patience. And you got to be willing to engage across, bipartisan, entire sector over many, many years if you want to be successful.
RJ?
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, especially if you're building a business that has large capital needs and long timelines to create, I think you need to have a lot of patience, and then in particular, you need to be comfortable sometimes not being fully understood, or in some cases being misunderstood. And what we've found is there's often asymmetry between what you're building and what you have in terms of knowledge of the business, the risks, what's the positive things that are coming, and as a public company, how the market may react to it or may think. And so we've become very comfortable being patient and recognizing that success in a business like this, in a business that has a lot of capex, and a business that has a lot of infrastructure, there's no such thing as overnight. It's going to take a very long period of time. But if you design your business around that and set expectations around that, I think the teams can really drive towards all the deliverables that happen along the way, all the milestones along the way. And so we celebrate the wins along the way, and then we look forward to the big launch events, the R1, the R2, the R3, these types of big events in our case.
Getting a little more personal, after the conditional commitment was announced to you guys, there was clearly a lot of social media interest, let's call it, into what you were doing. How do you actually, navigate all of that, sort of positive and negative energy that sometimes gets hurled your way?
Well, when Rivian first started, for the first many years, I should say, for the first almost decade, we were very stealth. We didn't say anything on what we were doing. We quietly were developing technology, and it was really nice in that there was no noise. So there was a bunch of people, hundreds of people working on something, privately financed. Nobody knew what the something was, and then we showed it to the world, and everybody got. I shouldn't say everybody. A lot of people got really excited. We built this big backlog of demand. And then we launched the product, lots of excitement. As I said before, it's done extremely well in the market. And then we went public, became a public company. And along the way, you actually hope for lots of people to comment on you. So articles to be written, people to have points of view. And so in our case, our products and what we build is incredibly visible. You see them in your neighborhoods. Maybe you get a package delivered from one of our vans. It's a very easy company to track. And as a result, there's lots of things that get said, lots of things that get written. And so I remember when we first launched our product, I would read every single thing that came out. And I'd be like, "Whoa, they got that wrong. This feature is a little bit different." And over time, I realized that if you're building something that's large, building something that has impact and has the potential to be really important, there's going to be lots of opinions. You have to have somewhat of a thick skin and be thankful that there's people commenting on your company. Be thankful that there's people that are actually maybe disagreeing with you, maybe having a different point of view than you. But the fact that you're drawing that attention is actually helpful. It's driving discussion. And I think as we think about the opportunities in front of us, in the next couple of decades, we're going to see the entirety of our energy systems transition. The types of work that Rob's doing, that we're doing, that's going to transition the economy to something that's much lower carbon intensity. We're going to see AI enter into the physical world in ways that are unimaginable in terms of the impact it's going to drive in industry and as well as our products. And to be part of that, and to be part of that discussion, be part of driving that discussion, driving curiosity, driving debate, I think, how lucky are we? How privileged are we as engineers, as creators, as builders, to be alive in this period of time when there's so much discussion, so much newness that's going to be coming over the next couple of decades.
Building on that, RJ, I'm curious, one of the things that we've heard a lot in the news over the last few weeks is that, this incentive is going to go away, or this thing might get repealed, or this thing might occur. It occurs to me that both of you have, pursued a strategy of just building superior products, right? And so when you think about all of the products and the progress that's made over the last 4 years, 8 years, right? Where is the momentum for, your product and your company, right? Obviously, the fertilizer market went, to a very high price in 2022. It's actually come down a little bit now. And so, but, how do you think about, the fact that your products are just, superior products? I mean, how does that trajectory take you?
Yeah, I mean, you said it in 2022, after the invasion of Ukraine. So in Russia, they have a huge amount of ammonia production in kind of the middle of the country. They put it in a pipeline called the Tagliati pipeline. It runs through Ukraine, and it loads onto ships in Odessa. At the start of the war, that pipeline was mined, it was blown up, and it no longer flows any ammonia. Prices for ammonia in Nebraska went up 300%. And all of a sudden, the farmers are sitting there, and they're in this really tough spot because corn prices didn't go up commensurate with that, and they got squeezed. And so the thought of having a world-scale ammonia production facility to insulate them from either weather events in the Gulf of Mexico where ammonia comes in, or geopolitical in the producers, it makes it a superior product, right? And so I think focusing on building something that has real market value is going to cut through any kind of perturbations in policy over the kind of arc of these technologies.
Well, and a similar question to you, RJ. I think when you think about your supply chains, right? I mean, such a high percentage of critical minerals and batteries, continue to come from China. I think we're building, 400 gigawatt hours or so of new battery capacity here. We're trying to build up the critical mineral supply chain here, et cetera. How do you guys think about that?
Yeah, I mean, supply chains are, particularly for the automotive industry, are really complex. If you take our R1S, our SUV, there's about 3,000 purchased items that go into the vehicle. But if you were to look at in terms of not just items, but specific, individual parts, there's well over 30,000 individual parts. So everything from wires to chips to, castings to plastic parts. There's a huge amount of content. And when you look at that supply chain, there's the tier ones that we buy from, then there's tier twos that supply to the tier ones and tier threes and so on. And so as you start to dig through it, it essentially reaches across the whole planet. And it reaches across the planet often in ways you don't expect. So take nickel. Nickel's in our batteries. 92% of the world's nickel comes from Indonesia. Now, as much as we would want to have 100% of the nickel come from the United States, it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen overnight. And so it means we need to build upstream supply relationships with companies that are exercising mining practices consistent with our values, and also navigate a pretty complex array of tariffs and trade policies to get the materials that go into our vehicles. And I think some things are easy. Some things are easy where there's a source that's local, where you can make the decision to say, I'm going to buy this, from the U.S. or buy this from Canada, or something that's geographically perhaps closer to where we are. but often that's not possible. So what I didn't predict, if you'd asked me, what's been a lot different than I would have imagined, is we've become experts at understanding and sort of untangling the puzzle of what do these supply chains look like for raw materials, and then building deep theses around what's the approach to make sure that that's a clean supply chain, make sure that that supply chain is robust from a political point of view. And these are challenging questions. These are not things you can solve overnight.
Thank you for sharing your insights with all of us, and thank you for all that you do and choosing to build big here in the United States.
Thanks, Jigar. Thank you.
Thank you, Ajay.